What happens when one of the most controversial royals in the world walks into the lion's den of daytime television? It only took 37 seconds for Prince Harry to completely lose his composure on live TV, creating one of the most shocking moments in talk show history. Before we dive into this explosive confrontation, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think about celebrity entitlement. The studio lights were blazing hot that Tuesday morning as The View's iconic theme music faded out. Whoopi Goldberg sat at the head of the curved desk, her expression serious, as she prepared to introduce their most anticipated guest of the season. Joy Behar shuffled her notes nervously, while Sunny Hostin adjusted her glasses with a slight frown. Sarah Haynes smiled warmly, always the peacemaker of the group, and Alyssa Farah Griffin maintained her composed political pundit demeanor. But it was Howard Stern, the radio legend, making a rare guest hosting appearance, who commanded the most attention. His wild hair perfectly styled, his piercing eyes scanning the studio with the confidence of someone who had interviewed thousands of celebrities over the decades. He knew exactly what buttons to push, and today, he was ready to push them all. "Ladies and gentlemen," Whoopi announced with her trademark authority, "please welcome Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex." The audience erupted in polite applause as Harry emerged from backstage, his smile looking slightly forced. He wore a crisp navy suit that probably cost more than most people's cars, his posture straight, but his eyes darting around the studio like he was already planning his escape route. He shook hands with each host, his grip lingering just a moment too long with Howard, as if sizing up his opponent. "Prince Harry, welcome to The View," Whoopi said as he settled into the guest chair. "We're thrilled to have you here." "Thank you for having me," Harry replied, his British accent crisp and calculated. "Though I must say, I expected this to be a bit more, well, civilized." The comment hung in the air like a bad smell. Joy's eyebrows shot up, while Sunny's pen stopped moving across her notepad. Sarah's smile flickered for just a moment before she recovered her composure. Howard leaned forward in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Civilized? That's interesting, Harry. Can I call you Harry? Or do you prefer your Royal Highness?" "Harry is fine," the prince replied, but his tone suggested it really wasn't. "Great, Harry, it is," Howard continued, his voice carrying that trademark edge that had made him famous. "So tell me, when you say civilized, are you implying that we're somehow beneath your standards here?" The question hit like a lightning bolt. Harry's jaw tightened visibly, his hands gripping the arms of his chair. "I simply meant that in England, we conduct interviews with a certain level of respect and decorum." "Respect and decorum," Howard repeated slowly, as if tasting the words. "That's rich, coming from someone who spent years trashing his own family on international television." The studio fell silent except for the hum of the cameras. Joy covered her mouth with her hand, trying to hide what looked suspiciously like a grin. Alyssa sat perfectly still, her political training keeping her expression neutral. Sarah looked genuinely uncomfortable, while Sunny leaned back in her chair, clearly intrigued by the direction this was heading. "I beg your pardon?" Harry's voice was ice cold now, all pretense of friendliness evaporated. "You heard me," Howard shot back without missing a beat. "You came on here talking about respect and decorum, but you've made a career out of airing your family's dirty laundry. So forgive me if I find your concern about civilized behavior a little hypocritical." Whoopi tried to intervene, her host instincts kicking in. "Now, Howard, let's maybe dial it back just a notch." But Harry was already leaning forward, his face flushed with anger. "You have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. My family put me through hell, and I had every right to tell my story." "Your story," Howard said, making air quotes with his fingers. "Right. And how much did that story earn you? A few million? More?" "This isn't about money," Harry snapped, his composure cracking like thin ice. "Oh, it's not?" Howard's voice dripped with sarcasm. "So, you're telling me that if there wasn't a massive payday involved, you still would have done all those interviews? Still would have written that book? Still would have signed that Netflix deal?" The questions came like machine gun fire, each one hitting its target with devastating accuracy. Harry's face was growing redder by the second, his breathing becoming more labored. The other hosts watched in fascination as one of the world's most famous men slowly lost control on live television. "You don't understand the pressure I was under," Harry said, his voice rising now. "The media harassment, the racism my wife faced, the complete lack of support from the institution." "The institution?" Howard repeated mockingly. "You mean your grandmother, who just passed away? Your father, who's dealing with cancer? Your brother, who's trying to raise his kids while serving his country? That institution?" Sarah finally spoke up, her voice gentle but concerned. Maybe we should take a step back here. This seems to be getting a bit heated. No, Sarah, Howard said firmly, never taking his eyes off Harry. This is exactly what we need to be talking about. This man sits in his mansion in California, worth millions, and wants us all to feel sorry for him because his family didn't give him everything he wanted. Harry's hands were visibly shaking now. You have no right to judge my situation. You have no idea what it's like to be born into that world. You're right, Howard agreed, his voice suddenly calm and reasonable. I don't know what it's like to be born with a silver spoon in my mouth, to have every advantage in life handed to me, to have people bow and scrape just because of who my parents were. Must be really tough. The sarcasm was so thick, you could cut it with a knife. Joy was now openly smirking, while Alyssa maintained her poker face, but her eyes betrayed her amusement. Sunny had stopped pretending to take notes and was watching the confrontation unfold with the intensity of someone watching a car crash in slow motion. Harry stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor with a harsh screech that echoed through the studio. The sudden movement caught everyone off guard, including the camera operators who scrambled to adjust their shots. His face was now a dangerous shade of crimson, and his hands were clenched into fists at his sides. I don't have to sit here and listen to this, he declared, his voice cracking with barely contained rage. Howard remained perfectly calm, leaning back in his chair like he was enjoying a pleasant afternoon chat. Oh, but you do, Harry. You agreed to come on this show. You signed the contracts. You wanted the publicity. Well, congratulations. You're getting it. This is harassment, Harry shot back, pointing an accusatory finger at Howard. This is exactly the kind of behavior that drove my mother to her death. The studio went dead silent. Even the camera operators seemed to hold their breath. Bringing up Diana was crossing a line that nobody had expected, and the shock was written across every face in the room. Joy's mouth fell open, while Sunny actually gasped audibly. Sarah looked like she wanted to crawl under the desk, and Alyssa's professional composure finally cracked, her eyes widening in disbelief. Whoopi's face hardened into an expression of pure disappointment. But Howard didn't flinch. If anything, he seemed energized by the desperate play. "Don't you dare," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Don't you dare use your mother's tragedy to deflect from your own bad behavior. That woman was a saint compared to what you've become. How dare you speak about my mother?" Harry screamed, his voice echoing off the studio walls. "You didn't know her. You have no right to even say her name." "I don't need to have known her to see what she would think of you now," Howard replied coolly. "A woman who dedicated her life to helping others, who used her platform for good, who maintained her dignity even in the worst circumstances. What do you think she would say about her son selling out his family for money?" Harry took a step toward Howard, his entire body trembling with fury. The security guards, who had been stationed discreetly around the studio, moved slightly closer, ready to intervene if necessary. "You're nothing but a shock jock," Harry snarled, "a washed-up radio host desperate for attention." Howard laughed, which seemed to infuriate Harry even more. "Washed up? Harry, I've been in this business longer than you've been alive. I've interviewed presidents, movie stars, musicians, and yes, even royalty. And you know what I've learned? The truly great ones, the ones worth respecting, they don't need to demand it. They earn it. I've earned more respect than you ever will." Harry shot back, his voice shrill now. "Have you, though?" Howard asked, tilting his head thoughtfully. "Let's see. You served in the military? I'll give you that. That was admirable. But since then, you've done nothing but complain, blame, and cash checks. Where are the charities you've built? Where are the lives you've changed? Where's the positive impact?" Whoopi finally found her voice, trying desperately to regain control of her show. "Gentlemen, I think we need to take a commercial break." "No," Harry said sharply, whirling around to face her. "I'm not finished. This man has insulted me, insulted my family, insulted my mother's memory. I demand an apology." The word demand seemed to trigger something in Howard. He stood up slowly, his full height now matching Harry's, and when he spoke, his voice was deadly quiet. "You demand an apology? You demand? Who exactly do you think you are? This isn't your little royal bubble where people have to do what you say because of who your daddy is. This is America, Harry, land of the free, home of the brave. We don't bow to entitled princes here." "I am a member of the British royal family," Harry declared, as if that settled everything. "No," Joy interjected suddenly, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "You were a member of the royal family. You walked away, remember? You can't have it both ways, Harry. You can't quit the job and keep the benefits." Harry spun toward Joy, his eyes blazing. You have no idea what you're talking about. Actually, I do, Joy continued, warming to her theme. I've been watching this whole saga play out, and you know what I see? A grown man throwing a tantrum because he didn't get his way. Your grandmother dedicated 70 years of her life to service. Your father has spent decades working for charity. Your brother is raising the next generation of royals. And what are you doing? Complaining on TV. Sarah tried one more time to be the peacemaker. Maybe we're all getting a little too heated here. Harry, why don't you tell us about some of the positive work you're doing now? But Harry was beyond reason now. Positive work? I'm trying to protect my family from the same machine that destroyed my mother. I'm trying to build a better life for my children, but apparently, that makes me the villain. No, Harry, Sunny spoke up, her lawyer instincts kicking in. What makes you the villain is sitting in your mansion complaining about how hard your privileged life is while people are struggling to pay their bills. What makes you the villain is profiting off family drama while claiming you want privacy. I never asked for privacy, Harry snapped. Really? Howard jumped back in, sensing blood in the water. Because I seem to remember a lot of talk about wanting a quiet life, wanting to protect your family from the spotlight. Funny how that quiet life includes Netflix specials and tell-all interviews. Harry's composure was completely gone now. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the studio's air conditioning, and his voice cracked with every word. You people are impossible. You twist everything I say. We don't need to twist anything, Alyssa finally spoke, her political background evident in her measured tone. Your own words condemn you. You've spent years talking about wanting out of the royal life, but you keep using your titles, keep trading on your royal connections. Keep bringing up your royal grievances. You can't escape the institution and profit from it at the same time. The cameras captured every moment of Harry's breakdown, every tremor in his voice, every desperate gesture. The man who had walked onto the stage with such confidence was now completely unraveled, exposed as exactly what Howard had accused him of being: an entitled, hypocritical, desperately attention-seeking former royal who couldn't handle being challenged. Harry's breathing was now rapid and shallow, like a cornered animal looking for an escape route. His perfectly styled hair was disheveled from running his hands through it in frustration, and his expensive suit was wrinkled from his aggressive posturing. The transformation from composed prince to unhinged guest was complete, and everyone in the studio could feel the electricity of a man on the absolute edge. You know what? Harry said, his voice now taking on a dangerous edge. I don't need this. I don't need any of you. I have more money than all of you combined. More influence, more power. I could buy this entire network. The threat hung in the air like poison gas. Howard's eyebrows shot up, not in fear, but in genuine amusement. Did he just threaten to buy the network? He asked the other hosts, as if Harry wasn't standing right there. I think he did, Whoopi replied dryly, her decades of experience in entertainment clearly showing her disgust at the display. Interesting approach, Joy added with a smirk. When you can't win an argument, just threaten to buy your opponents. Very mature, very royal. Harry whirled around to face Joy, jabbing his finger in her direction. Don't you mock me. I've sacrificed more than you could ever imagine. Sacrificed? Howard stood up again, his voice rising for the first time. You sacrificed what, exactly? Your free palace? Your free security? Your free everything? Let me tell you what sacrifice looks like, Harry. Sacrifice is the single mother working 3 jobs to feed her kids. Sacrifice is the soldier who comes home missing limbs. Sacrifice is not giving up your allowance to go live in a mansion. I served my country, Harry shouted back, spittle flying from his mouth. Yes, you did, and that was honorable, Howard conceded. But that was years ago, Harry. What have you done lately besides complain and count your money? Sunny leaned forward, her legal mind clearly working. Harry, can I ask you something? Do you actually hear yourself right now? Do you understand how you sound to regular people? Regular people? Harry's voice cracked on the words. I am not regular people. I never was regular people. I was born into a life of service, of duty, of constant scrutiny. You have no idea what that's like. You're right, Sarah said quietly, her gentle voice somehow cutting deeper than all the shouting. We don't know what that's like, but we also know what it's like to work for everything we have, to not have safety nets, to face real consequences for our action. You've never had to worry about paying rent or choosing between medication and groceries, or wondering if you'll have a job tomorrow. Harry turned to Sarah, his face contorting with rage. Don't you dare lecture me about hardship. My mother died because of the press. I've lived with that trauma my entire life, and I'm sorry for that loss," Sarah continued, her voice still calm. "Truly, I am. But you don't get to use that tragedy as a shield forever. At some point, you have to take responsibility for your own choices." "My choices?" Harry was screaming now, his voice echoing off the studio walls. "My choices were stolen from me the day I was born. Everything I've ever done has been scrutinized, criticized, torn apart by people like you." Howard stepped closer, his presence commanding despite Harry's royal tantrum. "People like us? You mean people who work for a living? People who earn their positions instead of inheriting them? People who face criticism and don't run away crying to California?" "I didn't run away," Harry protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "Really?" Alyssa jumped in, her political instincts sharp as ever. "Because from where I sit, it looks like you took your ball and went home the minute things got tough, and now you're mad because the game continued without you." The observation hit Harry like a physical blow. His face went white, then red, then white again. His hands were shaking so badly, he had to grip the back of his chair for support. "You're all against me," he whispered, then louder. "You're all against me. This was a setup. This was always a setup." "Nobody set you up, Harry," Whoopi said firmly. "You set yourself up. You came on this show expecting us to treat you like the victim you've convinced yourself you are. But we see right through it. The only victim here," Joy added, "is the British taxpayer who funded your lifestyle for 30-plus years and got nothing but complaints in return." Harry's face went through a series of expressions: rage, confusion, desperation, and finally, pure defeat. But instead of graciously accepting that he'd been outmatched, he chose to double down on his entitled behavior. "This interview is over," he declared, as if he had the authority to make that decision. "I'm leaving." "Actually," Howard said with a smile that could have powered a small city, "the interview isn't over until we say it's over. You signed a contract, remember? You wanted this platform, this audience, this attention. Well, congratulations, you've got it." Harry looked around the studio desperately, like a trapped animal. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every moment of his complete meltdown. The other hosts were staring at him with a mixture of disgust and fascination. "Security!" Harry called out weakly. "I want security!" "Security works for the network, not for you," Sonny pointed out, matter-of-factly. "They're here to protect us from unhinged guests, not to help entitled princes make dramatic exits." The comment was the final straw. Harry let out a sound that was half scream, half sob, and stormed toward the stage exit. But Howard wasn't done with him yet. "Hey, Harry," he called out, his voice carrying across the studio. "One last question. When you go home tonight to your mansion in Montecito, when you count your millions of dollars, when you plan your next publicity stunt, just remember this moment. Remember the moment when America saw exactly who you really are." Harry stopped at the edge of the stage, his back to the hosts, his shoulders heaving. For a moment, it looked like he might turn around and say something, maybe even apologize. Instead, he raised his hand in what could generously be called a gesture, though not a polite one, and disappeared into the backstage area. The studio erupted in chaos as soon as he was gone. The audience, which had been silent throughout the confrontation, burst into applause and cheers. The hosts looked at each other in amazement, hardly believing what they'd just witnessed. "Well," Whoopi said finally, adjusting her glasses and looking directly into the camera, "that just happened. Ladies and gentlemen, Prince Harry, everyone." Howard was still standing, still grinning, still looking like a man who just won the lottery. "You know what, folks? Sometimes the truth hurts, and sometimes entitled people can't handle the truth." As the show cut to commercial break, the cameras captured one final image: an empty guest chair, still warm from its occupant, and 5 hosts who had just delivered the most brutal takedown in daytime television history.